supposed to right now.
She's not going to be for the committee of the whole, but for the meeting, I guess. I just filled that up. Good?
Okay, I do have to do roll call,
Okay.
so if you're ready.
Yeah, should we call it to order first, or do
You
you want?
can,
Yeah.
sure.
So we'll call the December 13th Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Therese, would you call a roll call?
Commissioner Coring,
I'm here.
Commissioner Brecken,
Here.
Commissioner Barrows,
Here.
Commissioner Hoag,
Here.
and Commissioner Franzine is absent.
She's not going to be here today?
Correct. Well, for this meeting. Okay.
All right, first up is jail health. I'm not sure who's all presenting, but please come forward. Oh. All right, take her away.
We are here, Commissioners, today to talk about jail health. We had met with you at the Budget Committee. You had requested additional information, so we will present what we found out thus far, and I will begin. So you had asked us about Essentia and some costs associated with providing the services. At this time, because we haven't completely delved into all of the detail in terms of what the services might look like, Essentia was unable to provide us with an estimate at this time, but certainly they're willing and open to figuring out what the costs might be as we move forward. We did talk with them too about a potential stopgap. So if Mend were to leave the jail completely, how would Essentia be able to support us being the jail? Sorry, guys. They have a potential doctor lined up or a medical provider to be able to provide that oversight. I know there have been some discussions with the existing nurses and med techs in the jail to try and get them to stay for consistency of care. And then we in Community Services are working on a plan for the mental health portion of the work to fill in that gap. So I don't have a lot of updates for you today. That's as much as I could come up with, but these fine gentlemen here have additional updates for you.
So Heath, you want to talk about where we're at with the bid from ACH?
Currently, we're waiting on an updated bid from ACH. We got a secondary bid to our previous bid from 9/21. That second bid came in almost $360,000 higher than the original bid. We asked them to look at that bid again based on the numbers that they had given us that bid. It was based on a 220 daily population. We have not been at that number for quite some time, so we asked them to reduce it based on that. So I gave them 6 years of historical data to revise that bid again. So they were able to say that that would come down significantly probably. So at this point, we don't know what the updated number is, but we would hope to get that soon, either by the end of today or tomorrow. So with a high level of uncertainty, we are moving forward as fast as we can. We are in a difficult position with our nursing staff as they are not being paid. So when they show up each shift is kind of a bonus for us at this point. So this is something that we've got to navigate relatively quickly to keep our services going as best we can. So at this point, unfortunately, that's the only update I have on that bid.
Mr. Chair, if I might ask a question, one of the conditions that they had in their original proposal was a 3-year contract. And so are you addressing that with them also?
We haven't talked actual contract terms yet. All they've given us is a bid for the services. We haven't talked about any kind of time links or...
Just that $1 million or whatever it was, 400,000 over the current?
The 1.127
Yep.
was a yearly price. So we did not talk about terms of the agreement as far as years of service or anything like that.
Yeah.
So one of my concerns, I'm sorry, Commissioner, but one of my concerns is the short window of time we're working with to get this resolved. And if we aren't addressing them with every piece of what they've thrown at us, then I think we're not doing our job to let them know that we can't sit around and wait, and that we do have some parameters that we're going to operate within, whether they like it or not, and that they aren't holding us hostage. That's my concern.
No, they're not holding us hostage. We've been dealing with them since summer of 2021. We were trying to move forward with this for some time, but it just did not happen. So they're not trying to hold us hostage. They have a lot of counties who are inundating them right now for requests for performing these services, as men still had almost 30 counties in the state of Minnesota. There are no real good options right now. So they're not, I mean, the only thing they've been telling us is that because we've been dealing with them for so long, that we will be a priority for them to get into. But they have not said that it has to be this many years of a contract. They haven't given us anything like that as far as contract language in any such form.
From Troy the other day that they were looking for a 3-year deal.
There's nothing in the bid that said there was a 3-year agreement. That was a yearly price.
So how do I square what you guys have told me?
I was under the assumption it was a 3-year deal.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I can too, I think we have to hold them accountable, but I think we should be looking and considering paying the nurses and being reimbursed from them when time comes or whenever the contract works. But we need to move forward. And if we're sitting here negotiating and waiting, don't make those nurses work without being paid.
We have been meeting with the nurses. We've been trying to figure out ways to get them paid. We understand the difficult position that they're in. We have sat down with them all and basically told them what we're trying to do and reassuring them that we're going to try and do everything we can to make sure that they get paid.
This is, I consider this to be an emergency situation. And so what that means is that our typical procurement guidelines can be suspended. And so how we go about what Heath was talking about, I think we have a great deal of flexibility. Do we hire them through a temp agency? Do we hire them as temporary county employees? Independent contractor, which probably won't work because then they got to pay both sides of Social Security. So I think there are options here for us to do that. Whether it's ACH or Essentia, or if we decided to do this ourselves, we're going to need 3 nurses, 4 nurses, and 3 med techs. And so to let those folks walk away because they got to go look for a different job, and then us going out into the community and trying to find someone else to come in to do what that person who just left was doing, oh my goodness, that's going to put us behind a rock and a hard place. So in my mind, the first thing we have to do is stabilize those 7. And that will buy you some time. We have to get policies in place. We have to have a medical director oversight. And I'm forgetting one more.
Mental health.
Mental health, thank you. We need a mental health provider. So what we're working on right now is trying to buy you time. Buy you time so that ACH could actually deliver if we signed a contract, because they're going to have to stand it up. And they got 30 counties they're working with.
ACH does not use the med techs, so they would not be looking to retain those employees.
Okay?
They only hire RNs for their services, and those RNs are required to deliver medications.
And that might be a higher cost structure. So, I mean, the point is, we're not in a very good position to vet this for you
Correct.
today.
Yep.
And so you have kind of, I think, 3 options. You can try to buy yourself some time so that we can work with ACH and Essentia and get you 2 proposals to consider that are thoroughly vetted. 2, you could sign a contract with ACH. 3, I suppose we could try to do this ourselves. I'm not a big fan of that idea. I don't know what other choices. Am I missing any?
You're not,
No.
no.
So we are backed up against the wall, and I think we can get ourselves out of there if you authorize us to try to do some stopgap measures to buy ourselves time to get some good proposals for you.
And I'm reaching out to a lot of other counties who have gone through this in the recent years. Dakota County is one example, who went away from MEND to ACH quickly and had a relatively smooth transition. But a lot of counties have been leaving MEND rapidly over the last 2 years, so I think everyone's aware of their reputation in the media, and that does not end right now. at all, so that's still being tracked closely, so.
We are holding a check for MEND that is due to go out today.
What,
We would like direction from you about, are you okay if we hold that check? I think we should notify MEND that they are in breach of contract for failure to pay their staff, that we are short paying their invoice by the amount we need to cover their staff. We're going to pay them for you. That is not normal. There may be lawsuits eventually. It's like, I don't know what else you can do about that right now, other than live with the risk. That's why we carry insurance.
what has been done to get these people paid? I think we talked about this last week. I don't remember what day.
We
but-
have not pulled the trigger because we did not feel comfortable acting without your authorization to try to secure them. I have had a conversation. Troy brought the, was it office manager?
Yep.
Over yesterday, and so I sat down and talked with her and just tried to reinforce how important we think they are to our continued success, and asking them to give us a chance to employ them in some capacity, in some way. And I did talk about this short-term need versus the long-term. And so I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't think, for instance, we can cover men's vacation accruals. I don't see how the heck we do that, but I think we could get them paid. And that, I think, might tide us over. I don't know if you have anything, Troy, if you've heard any more from them about how receptive they are?
Yeah, they're very receptive. I think really, at the end of the day, they just want to know what direction we're going.
So on the behalf of the sheriff, I don't know how to make it work, but we need to figure out how to get those folks employed temporarily so we can pay them. I don't know how to do it. But that needs to happen, obviously, like you said. I believe Sheriff Goddard would be on board with getting something in writing from ACH. We need to get the dollar amount, whatever they're gonna settle on, and then work out terms of a contract. So essentially, we're just waiting on that dollar amount, and then we'll work out the wording of that contract and the length of time that's gonna be in place. And we have the ability to negotiate the terms of an out clause, if we want to be 6 months or whatever, how many days without cause and so many days with cause, we can work that into the contract. Ultimately, our end goal would be to have a community partner, and I know I've said this already, I think that's everybody's goal. That's the best case scenario, but realistically, I don't think Essentia is there yet. Whether or not they really want to be in the jail business, I don't know. I think it's awesome that they're at the table discussing this. And if we can keep them at the table discussing it, that's great. So if we can get a number from ACH and we'll work out those terms and we'll get something signed. But priority is we got to get these people hired and paid. Whether we pay them out of what we're going to pay MEND or what we do. I don't know how to do that, but we got to make it happen.
I had a conversation with Mel last week about that, and we looked at independent contractor. Kathy Tenzing got us the forms that we would need to be able to pay them that way. I also connected with a temp agency to talk through what that might look like. So we have some options. We just need to share those options with the staff and see what they're up for. I think one of their concerns was that they would, if they signed with a temp agency or did the independent contractor route, that might jeopardize their PTO balances and agreements with MEND, so we'd have to help them figure that piece out. That was one of their concerns, and I'm not sure what their contracts look like with MEND, but.
And I don't think we're going to be able to secure that for them, but I think there are things we can do that might help them, like telling MEND, we're paying them on your behalf.
Commissioner Coring.
I just want to let you know where I'm at. I would say I'm in favor of holding back on sending the check to MEND. I agree that we've got to try to figure out how to pay these people. I don't know that I necessarily like the idea of us hiring a whole bunch of people, and I like the concept of a community partner, but I somehow think this, I don't know, I'm having a hard time making any decision because I don't think this is flushed out enough to me. but somehow we need to temporarily keep things going. I think, to me, if we can get a community partnership with Essentia, to me, that would be perfect. What else do you need to know from me? But I favor holding back on paying them, and if that puts us in a legal situation, I just think that ethically it's the proper thing to do, to pay these fine people that are doing good work.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might, we're going to have risk regardless. If we lose these people, the risk will be over at the jail and we don't provide the service. So risk is there regardless of the position that we take. So I agree with Commissioner Coring that we ought to withhold the money and take our chances with that risk versus not providing the service to the inmates over there.
Any thoughts to the contrary? If we run into a snag and we can't retain that staff for some reason, don't be too surprised if we ask you for an emergency meeting. Because this is rapidly developing. I think MEND is sort of evaporating around us. So that's what we're trying to deal with. I think we have direction. Do you guys have any other questions?
Nope.
We're going to try to make it happen.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next item. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today we have myself, Will Cooksey, and Tim Terrell to talk about a potential land acquisition up in the Township of Fairfield. And Will will walk you through some of the specifics of the land and the partnership and how we applied for a grant. They applied for a grant and they would donate the land to us. But I just wanted to start with a little refresher on our land asset management policy and how that, what we're trying to accomplish our broad scheme with how we're managing our land holdings. And so the kind of top three guidelines of our policy is no net loss of tax forfeited lands in the county. At one time, we were about 105,000 acres under county forest management. Currently, we're at 200 acres, 103,200. This current acquisition would be 1,280 acres, which would, get us back closer to that 105. Is kind of a loose. There was no real specific acreage when the no net loss was there. But the other thing that we balance with the no net loss is return private ownership to tax forfeited lands that don't meet our criteria for good forest management or recreation, wildlife, stuff like that. So basically we have these fragmented, isolated 40s that over the last 3 or 4 years we have been selling and putting back in private ownership, which then hits the tax rolls. What we do then is take some of the proceeds, if we can, and buy land that's contiguous with other larger land masses. So you have unfragmented large chunks of forest land that is really healthy for watershed, wildlife, and easier if we want to do some recreational opportunities. With that, Will, if you're on, if you want to take it there with some of the specifics of the property, by all means.
Sure, thank you. And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, is the volume okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So my name is Will Cooksey. I'm a Senior Project Manager with the Trust for Public Land. TPL, we're a national land conservation organization. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year, and our mission is to protect land and create parks, ensuring healthy, livable communities for generations to come. And in pursuit of that mission, TPL is partnered with the Mississippi Headwaters Board. I believe Tim Terrell, the executive director of that organization, is in the office or in the audience there with you all. And we've also partnered with the Board of Water and Soil Resources to protect in fee and conservation easement priority lands in proximity to the Mississippi River as it flows through the first 8 headwater counties. And through this partnership, we receive funding to support our fee acquisition work from the state of Minnesota's Outdoor Heritage Fund. And then in this partnership, you know, we're excited about the opportunity to discuss this potential acquisition with you all today, which is specifically 1,280 acres in Fairfield Township, just south of the community of Emily, and it's a really solid block of forest that would really be a good and as it maps a good addition to the county forest. More specifically, TPL, if we were to move forward in partnership with the county, would complete the real estate due diligence, such as the appraisal review, the environmental investigation, the title investigation, the contracting necessary to purchase the property. And then we would purchase this former potlatch property. It's now owned by the Conservation Fund. We would purchase that property from them, and then donate the property to the county, where it would be managed like county forest. You know, this can include motorized trail use. There is a snowmobile trail that bisects the property, with the caveat that our grant agreement, which was created in partnership or in consultation with the county, would require a no net gain of trails. So put another way, if new trail were to be constructed, old trail would need to be closed and restored to forest. TPL is excited about this opportunity and looks forward to partnering with the county, should the county board so wish. Maybe we should look at some maps, if those aren't already on the available to you. Great. So the subject property is outlined in orange in this map. The county forest is all in green, so you can see it really blocks up existing county forest really nicely. Therese, there may be another map or two that we can view. Sure. So here's an aerial image. Here's an aerial image of the property. There's no improvements to speak of on the property currently. Again, this was former potlatch land, and it has connectivity to Highway 6 on the east, and then really nice access in other points of the parcel. And then the county staff did perform a trail inventory, and Therese, that's on another map, so we have an understanding of what those are. The white lines, if you can see them in this map, and again the red parcels are the subject property. So that's the existing trail inventory as mapped by county staff. And Gary asked me to provide some information on current property taxes and other matters, and that's summarized in the text of the first page. But just as a high level, currently the 2022 taxes payable for this entire 1,280 acre property are roughly a little over $11,000, $11,098. County staff have, I think, a conservative estimate of annual revenue from timber would be in the nearly $13,000 range. And then just for point of comparison, Gary asked me to put together the amount that the county would receive under kind of the extraordinary circumstance that the property were to be owned by the state of Minnesota and you were to receive PILT payment. And that amount would be based on 2022 estimated market value, around $14,000. Gary, anything to add, or otherwise I'm certainly love to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I just wanted to clarify or highlight a couple of the questions that have been posed from the board and make sure you guys were good with the information. The first thing with the taxes being $11,098. The $12,800, that's the current taxes. There's a good chunk of red pine. We usually cut red pine about every 80 years, but we thin it. So the majority of this is aspen, which is about a 45-year rotation. Now, it doesn't mean that we only have one timber cell. There's enough land here, talking when Ryan was here. You know, it's probably every 4 or 5 years we'll have a substantial timber sale on this chunk. That could be anywhere from 30 to 50,000, but when you spread it out long term, we do think it might be a little conservative, but around 13,000 a year on an annualized kind of income off the property versus the current property taxes at 11,000. And the good thing with this too, there's potential for trail connections and stuff. There's some ATV interest trying to connect Emily to Cross Lake. We just met with the group up there not that long ago. This was not the best map, but all those little white lines, many miles of already accounted for trails that while we couldn't increase the overall number, there's plenty of little deadhead kind of spurs and stuff that we could replant into forest to make, better trail connections in the future, if that's what the board wanted to do. So there's a good recreation opportunity. Forest management is really strong, very little. I think this parcel consists of less than 4% of lowlands, so it's a lot of upland, a lot of really good harvestable forest and really good wildlife habitat. But just wanted to clarify a couple of those things.
Gary, what are the white lines on that map?
Yeah, those are
Them are the trails?
Yep, those are the
okay.
existing trails or forest roads as they sit before we would acquire it. So we would expect that using that amount of mileage, we could do reroutes if we wanted, or use, if any of those made good connections with a future proposal, could use those as well.
As long as we got something to work with there, then we can be pretty flexible about moving it. And I think that's the point here is there appears to be enough to work with.
Looks like plenty.
Yeah.
Commissioner Corey?
Commissioner Coring.
Paul?
Yeah, first I want to say thanks to Gary and his staff. I think you're carrying out what the county board has kind of wanted us to do. We wanted to kind of clean up our portfolio of land that we have and get rid of some of these 40s that don't make any sense for us to own at all. And so I like the concept of this. Will, I appreciate your presentation. The only thing is I think everybody knows that I want to be able to manage that property the way we manage all of our land. And I just want to make sure there's no other caveats, Will. Is it just this no more trails? Is there anything else? You're not putting any other restrictions on us? Is there anything else that
Sure.
concern me?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Quiring, when TPL, when we buy the property, then we are, statutorily required to put a notice of funding restriction on the property that that the property be managed in accordance with the purposes of our grant for the benefit of wildlife, but and that would preclude the county from selling the property in the future without, I believe there will be financial penalty should you sell it. But generally speaking, there would be no other restriction on use of the property beyond managing it as you would similar property in your county forest system.
So no, Doug, Mr. Chair, so no restrictions on any hunting, no restrictions other than no net gain on trails is what you're saying.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Acquiring, the property would be fully open coring, I'm sorry, to hunting, to trapping, to public recreation, and for the purposes of wildlife and for forest management.
So one other question. So then, how do you know what we're doing? Do we have to give you a report every year, or how do you know that we're expanding the trails, or how do you even know what we're doing there in that property?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Coring, TPL will donate the property to the county, and then there will be and then at that point, the relationship is between the county and the state of Minnesota, whereby Gary and his staff will, on an annual basis, provide a report to the state as to how that property is being managed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I don't know why I guess I don't understand why you want to restrict any more trails, but it sounds like we got enough trails in there anyway. But I guess I have no objection to this. I think it fits into what our long-range plan has been to get larger tracts of land and manage the forest. And the money that we're receiving from this forest management plan has gone to good use. I don't know if you know that it goes to our parks, our Fire Tower Park, our Milford Mine, the South Long Lake Park. All the money generated from the sales of those tree sales goes towards the park. So I think it's getting to the goal that your organization wants anyway, Will. So that's all.
Fantastic.
Gary, anything else?
Just here for questions, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm also in favor of this. I think it fits well with the current owned property up there, and it just enhances that block of acreage up there. So I would approve of this.
I would support it also.
As I would. All
We'll
right.
bring it forward for your consideration. That won't be today,
No, we've
but
got
it'll
a
be
lot
at a
of,
future board meeting.
yep. Okay, cool.
Good, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up is Jake.
Lake Improvement Districts is next. Do we need to break?
Where is everybody?
Well, I don't know.
We're running.
We were hoping you
We're
knew.
running ahead of time.
We'll take
I
a,
turn around and they'd be here. Let me go grab it.
They might. Well, if they
They
were.
weren't on, because they weren't on till 4. 5,
and
Yeah.
if folks need to go to the bathroom or whatever.
I'm gonna go downtown and have a cup of coffee. I'll see you later. Real quick, Paul, what's the temperature, and is the sun in your eyes there?
It is in my eyes. Let me check and see. I don't know. 79.
Okay, we're Starting back up here, go ahead, Jake, or whomever, Jessica.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're here to discuss the county's lake improvement districts, also known as LIDs. As you recall, last year we brought you kind of the similar information we're bringing you today. And upon your request at that time, we're here to do so again. I was going to introduce Janelle when I get to the AIS portion, but since she's sitting here, I'll introduce her now. Since Nicole resigned at the end of November, as you all know, we recently promoted Janelle from our customer service team to be an environmental services coordinator. And we also have Stephen, sorry. We also have Stephen Timblin, who joined our team in May. He is not here tonight. But we're just excited to have a team to coordinate our AIS program, and we think this is really going to enhance our efforts with this program. So this is Janelle. All right, the reason I'm here today is just to provide you a summary of information about our LID financials and an update on the 2022 year, and get your feedback or any concerns that you may have with or concerning the LIDs, and then to discuss some potential policy revisions moving forward. Crow Wing County has 9 lake improvement districts, with the first being created in 2004, and that is Round Lake, and the last being Seabee Lake in 2018. We have one potential LID that's working on becoming created, and that is Upper and Lower Mission. In the fall of 2020, we revised our policies on lake improvement districts to incorporate changes that were more consistent with state statute and easier for the lake improvement districts to understand. Each year, the LIDs are required by statute and county policy to provide an annual report that includes an annual budget, which has all projected expenses and income for the coming year, and a summary of expenses for the previous year. The LID must also report on all items we require as part of a checklist we provide to them in the late summer each year. Some of these items include a proposed assessment for the following year, monitoring reports, financial reports, their board members and elected officers, proof of insurance, and then accomplishments in the current year and plans for the future year. As of today, we have received all of the annual reports, and they are completed and meet all of our policies and guidelines. For financials, that is one of the sheets we gave you here. The first page shows their proposed assessment. We gave you 2022's assessment amount, and then what they're proposing for 2023. We did have 3 of them that did increase for 2023. As you can see, Kimball, Ossawinamakee, and Upper South Long are increasing for the 2023 tax year. One LID, Round Lake, has not assessed property owners for the last 3 years due to high remaining LID balances. And you probably recall that the county has been working on transferring the LID funds out to the LIDs themselves instead of us holding their funds. CV LID funds are still being held by the county, and the plan is for those monies to be directly managed by the LID for 2023 once they have a bank account set up to do so. All of these LID reports are on the county website for the public and yourself to review the full report that we receive. Is there any questions on the assessment or the budget reports that they provide?
Mr. Chair, Jessica, I can track the LID increases here and go back and quickly look at what their beginning fund balance is, what their ending fund balance is, and I can usually figure out, oh yes, that's why they need an increase, because they're spending more than they're taking in.
Yep.
What's going on with Ruth? I see their fund balance starting the year at 7,200, ending the year negative 5,700, but they're not going to change the assessment.
Theirs is, and I spoke with finance, we are actually still holding the Ruth LIDs funds at this point. The
Okay.
county still has them because they had invoices, because they would send all their invoices to us and we would pay them for them. At the time that they sent an invoice that was about 20,000 or so, they did not have enough funds in their account. That's why you see that negative balance when they reported. So they're waiting for this settlement that now has been processed for the second half taxes to get their balance back up to a positive amount, and then we will be transferring those funds out.
And so if at the end of that, do we think that it is adequate?
There's approximately $6,000, just over $6,000 that was in their account. It is being settled out to them as we speak.
Okay.
So they will have 6,000 cash at the end of this year, excluding any expenses they bring forward after that.
6 grand gets them to break even. No fund balance.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
They're still not asking for an increase? If they spend at the existing levels, they can't fund next year.
Mr. Chair, I think that they've typically over the years have run in a negative balance.
I think they've been really close because they do fund their own, a lot of their own AIS program. We do provide funds to them from our AIS grant, but they do a lot of their own funds into that AIS program from the LID.
And then the only other one that struck me was Upper South Long. Their financial situation seems pretty stable, beginning the year at 39,000, spending 40, taking in 40, ending the year at 38,000. Looks very stable. But I see that the assessment is being proposed to change from 75 to 150. Are they proposing to do something different?
I think they just, with Upper South Long, I'm pretty sure it was Upper South Long right now. He did, the president, I believe it was, did a much deeper dive when we sent them the list of properties that should be assessed for that lid. And so I think with taking some of them off there that shouldn't have been assessed, or vacant properties, or different scenarios, I believe as far as I remember, that is why they're increasing, because there is.
Wouldn't it, if they're doubling the assessment, wouldn't it have to be based on the premise that they have half as many parcels?
If you look at it that way, yeah, but it did not drop by half.
That's something, Commissioner Coring, I just want to maybe put on your radar, that I can't
Well-
see the finance trail there. That's all I'm saying is, I can't see the finance trail there. I can see it on all the rest of them, but that one stands out to me. So put it on your radar. That's all I'm doing.
I'm glad you did put it on my radar. That is quite concerning to go from 75 to 150. That's a 100% increase. So I would assume that the full LID board has to approve that. Is that correct?
The LID membership has to approve that at their annual meeting. It's run very similarly to a township setting its levy.
Okay. So then this spring, they must have, I never attended that. I attended my own, but they must have approved that then.
I presume so. Do we check that?
I see.
Yes, they did.
All
They have
right.
to show proof that
So-
it was approved in the
Okay.
report.
So just a couple questions for somebody. I thought CB Lake was the only one that we were managing the money for, but you said now we're still handling the money for Ruth?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, they did get a bank account set up. We went back and forth for a little bit. The bank account that they have is actually tied to their AIS program as well. So we wanted to clarify with them that they were able to manage the funds appropriately to track both of those separately. So we had some delays there. In the time that we got an answer, we ended up with an invoice for $20,000. They only had a $16,000 balance at that time. So we held their
Are you
funds
talking
until...
about, are you talking about Ruth?
This
Or
is
you-
for Ruth. We held those
Okay.
until they actually got their second half settlement here in December, when they had $6,000+ left after we settled that invoice. Now we're settling it back to them. So Ruth will be off our books at the end of this year yet. CB Lake, the challenge that we're having there is none of their board members want to provide their social security number to the federal government to get an employer ID, which is required for them to do to set up as a nonprofit and to have that bank account. Without them being willing to put their social security number, they are not willing to go forward with getting a bank account. So we do have to make a decision there of how we want to address that and handle that one going forward. That is the only account that we have left with funds, with Ruth being settled now.
Tim?
I do understand.
Tim, are we
go
able to cancel? The county board is the one that creates these lids. So if they're not going to go by what the county board instructs them to do, are we able to cancel that?
I do
Lake
not believe
Improvement
so.
District?
I think your option is to send them a check.
Okay.
And
I'm a little bit troubled. I don't want to start finance. I know you said Ruth is going to be done, but that's a little bit troubling. It kind of reminds me, probably nobody remembers it, but the Congress used to have a house bank account, and people just keep writing checks whether they had money in there or not, and then it was covered. I just don't know that, I don't want to I don't think we're going to be in that practice of lids writing checks and then we cover the balance.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, that was actually the reason that we went down this path of pushing that money back and having them manage the funds. We did have some accounts that would go negative and continue submitting receipts, and we didn't have an effective way to prevent that check from going out. So we were paying checks for accounts that were negative and waiting for those settlements to come back in to bring those accounts to the positive again. So that's what got us down this path of pushing that back.
The other thing is I realize and understand and I'm sympathetic to the fact that folks are reluctant to give out their social security number. They should be. And this is a federal banking requirement. The federal government gave you the social security number and the federal government is expecting it back to set up an employer identification number. It's the Fed's rules. If you can't give the social security number to the federal government, who the heck can you give it to? That's what it's for. So I understand the reluctance. I don't think it's valid.
Well, where do we go from here as far as that's concerned? This has been ongoing. They're the ones that they tried to create a lid the first time, and if I remember correctly, there wasn't enough votes, and then finally they got enough votes to create a lake improvement district, but yet they don't want to go by the rules that are set forward. So it doesn't make any sense to me. And to send them a check, who would you send a check to?
To the chair of the lid.
Yeah.
I think then they would figure it out. Or they would come to us to sunset their lid because they don't want to open a checking account.
Tim,
Okay.
do you think we should do that? We should make that decision and just do that? Because
I do. I'm happy to have a conversation with them, and so when you're talking to them, Paul, you know them, and so if you
Yeah.
want to have them give me a call, I'm happy to talk to them about that reluctance and see if I can help break the logjam on it. But at the end of the day, it's a federal requirement for a federal identification number. The concern here isn't something we should change our practice for.
well, I'm
Mr.
going to work on trying to get that resolved.
Okay, that would be the best, Paul. If you can help to weigh in and help us with that, I'm available to help you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brecken.
No, I was just going to go the same way in regards to, they need to follow the procedure. And if not, it's not a valid lid.
I agree. I had one question. Back on that upper South Long Lake, did you say they took a deeper dive and added parcels to their lid, or did I hear that wrong?
I think they have either a new president or someone finally, so our office sends a full list when it comes to this assessment. They send a full list of properties on the lake that are currently being assessed, who's not, who is, whether it's then the lids themselves have to review that and send that back to our office to certify their assessment each year. And we got quite a few emails back and forth on, I believe I don't remember if it was upper or lower South Long, because he was looking into it because it hadn't been looked into, because there was properties with the same owner, contiguous properties, and that's one of the requirement, or one of the policies is if they're contiguous properties and say I own two of them and I have a house on two, I'm only assessed one, or if I have a house and say a garage, I'm only getting one assessment. So he looked further into that and went through that list.
I do know the answer to that. That was not Upper South Long. That was Lower South Long. It's Mike Vasquez, who's the Lake Improvement president. He took over from Mike O'Brien, and he's actually doing an excellent job. And he's trying to clean up and kind of fix it. So I believe that was Mike Vasquez that's doing that, unless the president up in Upper South Long is doing it. But I know for a fact that Mike is doing it.
Yep, you're right, it was Mike.
So I guess in general, can a lid go ahead and add or assess other properties, or how does that work? They can't just automatically say, I want you guys now, and is that?
Go for it.
So, Mr. Chair, the lid can only assess the properties that are spelled out in our policy and by law and those that were identified in its creation. So long as it's following those guidelines, and I don't know in the weeds on that one specifically, then it's fine.
Well, for instance, they have to be riparian.
Yeah,
A lid can be formed for what, up to 1,000 feet from the lake?
absolutely.
And so you can have second, third, fourth tier development inside the lid. Nobody ever does that because they don't want to pay. And then the petition process will fail. So we have specified it has to be riparian. Even that, riparian for a common interest community, how many owners are there? Do you get one assessment? Does each one get one? The common ownership you described. How far upstream on the creek that feeds the lake do we go? There's all sorts of details like that. I think Jake is right. As long as they fit the parameters that we have established in the order that set them up, I am okay that they can make some small changes. If they came to us and said, we want to add the whole second tier of development, that would be a material change that we would bring to the county board. That would be the establishment of a new lid.
Okay.
I think that's how we administer it.
Good, thank you.
Some questions did come up this last year about the annual fee that we charge for, it's an annual administration fee of $250, which is set each year with the county fee schedule. Section 4 of our policy states that there is an annual fee required to cover county costs related to the administration of the lid. And that administration fee includes our review of their plans every year, working with them to certify their assessments. And we feel this should still be charged because of the work we do each year. They thought that they were not, some of them, not all of them, reached out and were wondering why they were getting charged that when we were no longer in charge of their funds, because we released the funds back to the lids. And we just explained that it's the administration of the policy, or the plans and the assessment every year. And then for potential updates, as I said, this plan, or these policies were just updated in 2020. And then going through them this year with the questions from Lower South Long on which properties are assessed and a couple other minor details. We do propose a couple updates or potential updates. In Section 5, we used to have a deadline of November 1st for the filing of the annual report. We are proposing to change that to October 1st so that we have more time to review and work with our assessment specialists to get the assessment certified for the following year. And one of the things that was brought up when we met with you last time was that you would like to approve their assessments. So we would need that approved by you guys before the certification of their assessments on November 30th. So that's why we wanted to move that date to October 1st to give us more time to review the plans, make sure they have everything, come to you in a setting like this, and then present their actual assessments for approval at county board before November 30th. And then in Section 9, there's just a spot down in the last paragraph where it's stated otherwise provided for, and it used to say item number 9 below. Well, that paragraph is in item number 9, so just updating that to state item number 10. And then in Section 10 there on the last page, this is what we were talking about that kind of got brought up when Lower South Long was going through there, to just better call out which properties are assessed, if it's common ownership, if it's contiguous lots, or non-contiguous lots, what is eligible for a vote to sign the petition and be assessed, the lid assessment. And then along with those updates, our proposal is, we're bringing it to you today, and then we would send this out for a 30-day comment period to the existing lids. And then we would bring it back to you to a county board meeting after that 30-day comment period for final approval of these revisions, and it would go into effect for the next 2023 reporting year.
These are policies. We're not required to hold a public hearing for them if you don't wish to. I agree with Jessica. It's just good practice. 30 days allows for a lid to have a meeting instead of just giving them 2 weeks. It is the off time of year. They may struggle with some members who have gone south, but I hope they could use Teams to accomplish it. So I think it's reasonable, but given the time of year, you may very well hear that someone is gone and we couldn't meet that timeline.
Good.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Coring.
Tim, when just to follow up on something that you said our policy is riparian. Are you saying that, I know for a fact that Lower South Long is 1,000 feet, and there are some people that don't live on the lake or don't have rights, I mean, other than the public access, but they're still having to pay this assessment.
It is possible
Can
that
you
it was
clarify
created
that?
that way. I
What's that?
just am not familiar with the specifics of each one. All I can tell you, Paul, is
Okay.
my experience at the general level is, I haven't seen one come forward that was anything other than just riparian, unless I missed that, and these guys came through since I've been here. But if this one is 1,000 feet from the lake, it has that capacity. In fact, I think the definition in the statute is the drainage basin for the lake. If you want to
Yep.
consider the lake shed, those are really big areas. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
This is
they can do
1,000
more,
feet,
but
I
they
know
tend
that
not
for
to.
sure, yeah.
This is the only one we have that's not, that has.
Gary just said this is the only one we have that has anyone other than riparian properties.
Yeah, it's interesting because the state of Minnesota and the statutes actually encourages
Lake shed.
more holistic, more to, because the watershed is what affects everything. But like Tim was saying, typically we just see the lake owners.
Right.
So it, yeah.
Because it would affect how many petition signatures they would get in a petition process to establish a lid.
Right.
They got a lot more no's in that group,
Okay.
just is.
All right, so with that, we just propose the following process changes moving forward. We'll compile these reports, as you've seen here, with the budget and assessment amounts, and bring that to County Board each November for approval. And would you like to see this in the Committee of the Whole format like this with to go over the lid reports? Or do you want us to just bring the assessment to County Board for approval each fall? And we can go over it then,
Each
or?
fall, going forward?
Yeah.
I'd
like to have a review,
Doug?
I think.
Well,
So you're saying
I
Committee
personally think this has to have a review. I mean, we're the governing body that creates these lids. I still believe that if something happens, if something fraudulent happens, this is actually going to fall back on the county board. So I think a short review somewhere, whether it's at the Committee of the Whole or it's at the county board, I still would like to have like maybe a 15-minute review every year or somewhere in there. I just think it's important to have some oversight on this, if that makes sense.
Committee of the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to help the board, if there's a substantial change like Upper South Long this year, we'll go back to the lid and ask to have a really good explanation what the need is, so it's real clear when we come to you, just we don't have to sit here going, why 100% exactly,
Yeah. Good. Okay.
I think that's a good idea, Gary. I really do. Because the thing is when these people get their tax statements and there's another 150 tacked on there, I know who they're going to call because it's going to say Crow Wing County on it. They're going to call me. I just got a call just before this meeting started, and she was wanting to know, should I come to this meeting tonight? And I explained to her what's happening tonight wouldn't be the right meeting for her to come to. She was talking about her valuation. So anyway, that's it.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else on the lids? Otherwise, I'll move on to AIS.
I think we're good there.
All right. Well, I already introduced Janelle, which I was going to do here. So I'm just going to go over like our AIS prevention plan wrap-up. We held that on October 19th. Just go over some bullet points from that and then some ideas we have for the next, for the 2023 plan. Some things that were brought up by lake associations in that wrap-up meeting. They had issues with us not fulfilling our expanded coverage hours, and this again was just due to limited staff. Our plan states that we're going to fill our core county program hours first, and if we have the staff and ability, we'll fill those expanded coverage requests as we can. They talked about ideas on how to fully staff our program, increase pay. They talked about, can we accept donations from them to help with our funding to increase the pay to inspectors and possibly changing the hours that we staff the landings. They did not like the switch to only 9 to 6 shifts, and we did not allow expanded coverage outside of those hours just because of the staffing issues we were having. A lot of those lakes like having people there at 7 a.m. and staying until 7 or 8 at night. For some of our inspectors, that could be a 12-hour shift. Some of them really like that, but we don't like making them be out at those landings for 12 hours. Getting our mobile decon at more accesses to increase our decon numbers. In order to do this, we do need to buy a reclaim mat in order to be at more accesses. We're only approved to be at certain accesses because we don't have that mat to reclaim the water and put it back through our machine. So that's something we're looking into for next year. They were questioning what we are doing with our large rollover of funds due to not fulfilling our inspection hours. I'm estimating right around 100,000 rollover this year. Typically, we have 10,000 or less. One plan with that is to help increase our wages, but not increase it so much so that next year, if we don't have that big rollover, that we can't cover those wages. But increased wages is definitely something we've heard from our inspectors, lake associations, that they want and we think would help us staff our landings better. The lake associations like the grants that we give for lake treatments and the new Star Research program we implemented in 2022. In total, we gave out just over $27,000 in these different grants to the lake associations. For Eurasian water milfoil treatment, we give out $2,500 per lake access. And this year, we paid out just over $20,000 to those lake associations. The Star Research program was a new program Nicole implemented this year to get our lake associations more involved and more, they're going out there and trying to identify AIS in their lakes. We showed them, we had trainings with them, showed them how to make a rake and send in samples of what they found. And we gave them $200 per lake access, and we paid out $3,400 for this. We planned for 25 possible accesses to receive funding. 17 of them actually completed the program and received funding. 12 lake associations came to training and signed up, and 11 of those completed the program and submitted for funding. We also pay for zebra mussel villager and spiny water flea testing, and that is right around $2,800 each year. For the 2022 season, we allocated almost 16,000 watercraft inspection hours, and we met 11,500 of them, so that's 72% of our hours that we met. The expanded coverage request totaled just over 6,500 hours, and we fulfilled almost 2,700 hours, and that's only 41% of those expanded coverage requests. This year was our first year back to full in-person county training because we had to do online due to COVID for a couple years, so our inspectors really enjoyed that. And same with the DNR, that was all online. They still do a hybrid, some is online, but they're able to do more in-person training, which is really helpful for those inspectors to get the hands-on training instead of watching a video so they know what they're looking for. New this year, like I said, was that Star Research program. We did that instead of giving out the $250 grants for outreach. From what we could tell, the lake associations really like this program. They like learning more about AIS and what they can do to help their lake. For 2022, we paid our inspectors $16 an hour if they were a returning or experienced inspector, and new inspectors received $15. Our decon texting service was new 2 years ago. We have signs at all our landings, and we're trying to get the word out about that. So it's a really nice, kind of like you see on all kinds of advertisements now. You text decon to this number, and then it will tell you where our decons are located. And we also have a phone number they can call. So we received 77 calls last year and 110 incoming text messages. And what's nice with this texting service is we are able to send text message blasts out to our inspectors as well. So if we knew there was bad weather coming, we were able to quickly shoot out a text message to all of them instead of trying to call them at each landing and tell them, you know, you can go home at 2 o'clock or you can go home for the day. We know the bad weather's coming. So there's multiple uses for that. Just some stats on total inspections performed. In 2022, we were at almost 39,000 inspections. This is a little low, just due to the staffing levels, of course. And comparing that to 2021, we were 55,327. And in 2020, which was our biggest year, which is the COVID year, 64,397 inspections. And then going back to 2019, which is kind of where we're getting back to the pre-COVID numbers, we were just over 49,000. So we're kind of seeing the numbers go back to those. For 2023, our plan, we're working on it right now, will be out for public comment by the end of December, as it always is. Our aid from the state decreased by $850, so we will be getting $462,052 in 2023. Some of the things I've already talked about for potential changes is increased wages. We're going to try to pay our inspectors $2 more per hour, potentially reducing hours at the landings or the number of landings that we cover. And then working on promoting our decon, since our numbers were down so much this year. In 2022, we had 138 decontaminations, and that's counting our station at Cross Lake, which is a permanent one, and then we have our mobile decon. So that's counting both of them. Where you compare that to 2020, we had 189 decontaminations. And buying that reclaim mat, like I had talked about, to help increase those decon numbers so that that mobile decon can be at more landings. And potentially purchasing another mobile decon so we can have them at multiple landings. So the question I have for you, is there anything else you would like us to look into for the 2023 season, or do you have any further questions on the 2022 season?
I've got a question. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this, but, you know, I still contend that this is all feel-good stuff, where we feel good about trying to stop a contamination going into a lake. I contend that the cows are out of the barn already. And I think, to me, the money would be well spent for some type of a treatment, if there was a treatment, or developing some kind of a treatment. Does anybody know if there's any thoughts to that notion, or anybody talk about that idea, rather than, you know, trying to protect something that's probably already infected? Anybody?
If I could
Wanna
start,
try?
if that's okay.
Okay, you try and then I'll supplement.
In Crow Wing County, there's still over 100 identified, I think it's even more than that, Commissioner Coring, invasive species out there that are not in our county. So while we know of the normal zebra mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, spiny water flea, and mille lacs, we still have, like, we do not have any reports of, like, starry stonewort. That's supposed to be even worse than Eurasian water milfoil. And so while I would say a cow or two are out of the barn, there's still 100 or 150 cows still in the barn. I don't know that you want all the cows coming out of the barn. I'll just put it that way. I know that's a real bad analogy.
Well, that sounds good to me.
With that, though,
where is, Gary, where is this, what did you say, what is it?
yeah, starry stonewort. It's
Yeah,
like
where's that at?
I
do we know?
believe the closest we have is Leech Lake, I believe, has starry stonewort now, and I believe Winnebagosh also is infected. So it may be working its way this, you know,
There is
Mississippi flows, you know, right through our county.
There is one in Cass County, I believe maybe a Bass Lake is what it's called, just north of Crow Wing County.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add, Commissioner Coring, is that the University of Minnesota sponsors a research institute specifically on AIS research, MAISRC, I think.
MASERC.
Yep.
And so they are constantly looking for treatment modalities. The difficulty you're going to have in these situations is, in order to put enough chemical into the water to kill the plants, all of them, what are the other intended or unintended consequences of doing so? And that's where they're trying to really balance it. It's a big bottle, it's a big bathtub, and to put enough in so it's not too dilute and still accomplish the task without killing fish and everything else in the process. So I think that's their challenge. I think they're working on it. I can't really comment on how successful they will or won't be.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I mean, this whole AIS thing is going to be a challenge, I think, going forward. definitely have to work closer with the lake associations, because if they can't help us staff this or find staffing for it, we're seeing that that's getting more difficult as time's going on with this. I do think we have to work closely with the University of Minnesota. Nick Phelps obviously is the lead in that, and I think they can give us a little bit of an idea what goes with that. I think usually stony stonewort is found at the landings. That's the first place of contamination, so even our inspectors can watch for that, but all these, again, lake associations, they're going to take a stronger role. And I think that's part of the strength of incorporating LIDS with the lake associations, because that money for the Lake Improvement District is to help protect their lake. And so it's going to be a complicated plan going forward, and you're really going to have to get some people together to say what really is the future as we go forward, because we can't staff it, and we've got these extra funds, and so it's like, what are we going to really do? So I think there's a real discussion going forward of what the plan will be to alleviate some of this.
Mr. Chair, if I might, my concern is that when we authorize additional hours to an association versus the hours that we're providing, I believe that we need to have some clarity on how that gets billed out, and that it's their responsibility, this is my opinion, that they pay their bill regardless of whether we can staff our hours, or perhaps we don't do it at all. We don't give out extra hours, that we just keep that in-house. And so I think there needs to be more clarity in those agreements when we send it out, so that somebody isn't trying to sort of say, because we couldn't do our portion, that they shouldn't have to pay their portion. I just know there's been some disagreement on that, and I would like to see that clarified in the future.
If I could jump in on that one, Chair. That's why I was standing up here. I wanted to talk about, we have a new problem this year. Well, it really was a problem last year too, but the problem this year is we didn't get reimbursed by a lake association. So we're planning on your December 27th meeting to invite the lake association in to have the discussion on how do you want to move forward. We have a current issue by not receiving, we covered expanded hours for a lake association that they only reimbursed about 2/3 of the hours. And the sticking point is when we assign the allocation of hours, let's say on a landing, we say for this lake, we give you 520 hours. The new issue this year was for a lot of lakes, we didn't meet the 520 hour in our plan. And they wanted additional hours on top of the 520. And so their thought process is, well, if you only covered, let's say 400 hours of the 520, you said you were going to give us 520, so you should pay 520 hours, whether it was your core program or our program. That's where we're at, just to kind of summarize it. But I want to get, we want to give the Lake Association to, really put in what they're really thinking. I think that's where they're at. But one thing we'll be asking on the 27th is we'll have some options on what you would like to see, give you some options to see if you want any of those to move forward with the clarity that Commissioner Barrows is talking about.
Thank you. That'll be good.
Anything else?
Good stuff.
Thank
stuff.
you.
Thank you, folks.
Ward.
Congratulations on your job. That's almost impossible to complete. So.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're wrapped up.